My library story is pretty simple. Taking my daughter when she was 2 or 3 or 4, snuggling on the beanbag chairs on the floor, reading book after book. I love my Canton library, and librarian Miss Valerie provided that space. Big shout out, Miss Valerie. We asked you for your library story in our NCPR Texting Club, and you answered big time. The best North Country libraries in your words on today's Story of the Day.
Support for Story of the Day is provided by CCOM Credit Union, serving the financial needs of people throughout northern New York and Vermont. In person, online at ccom.org, and on your smartphone.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Thursday, April 13th. First up, a Champlain Valley farm that's been a mainstay at North Country farmers markets has declared bankruptcy. According to the Adirondack Daily Enterprise, Fledging Crow Vegetables in Keysville has stopped large-scale production and will no longer sell produce to the public. Owner Ian Adder says the 15-year-old business saw huge success at the start of the pandemic at local markets and in New York City. But sales plummeted as city workers moved to more rural areas, and the cost of running a farm nearly doubled due to inflation. Adder told the Enterprise he plans to sell produce to neighboring farms and contract with other farms to use his fields. He says the future of Fledging Crow is flexible. The city of Plattsburgh is starting construction on improvements to one of downtown's main streets, and a huge power transmission project on Lake Champlain will close down a city dock. Plattsburgh reporter Kara Chapman has more.
The Margaret Street reconstruction project is set to break ground on Monday, April 17th. Margaret Street is one of the most heavily trafficked streets in downtown Plattsburgh, home to many businesses and residents. The project's main purpose is to replace aging utility infrastructure that runs beneath Margaret, Court, and Brinkerhoff streets. Construction will take place in 2 phases, with the first expected to wrap by November. The rest of the work is slated for next year. Throughout the project, Margaret Street between Broad and Cornelia Streets will be temporarily reduced to one-way traffic. Traffic delays are expected. The city says on-street parking and parking lots downtown will continue to be available, though they'll be limited near active construction. Access to residential buildings and businesses will remain open throughout the project. The city will post updates every Friday morning on its online platform, My City of Plattsburgh. Beginning Monday, April 24th, part of Wilcox Dock off Cumberland Avenue will be temporarily closed to recreational use. For the next 2 years, its northern portion will be used as a staging area to support construction of the Champlain-Hudson Power Express. Once completed, the power line will bring hydroelectricity from Quebec to New York City. Wilcox Dock will serve as a receiving point for materials and a launching point for workers laying cables along the bottom of Lake Champlain. The city suggests residents use other public places for fishing, launching boats, and picnicking. Those include Champlain Monument Park, Peace Point Park, Sailors Beach, Centennial Park, and Plattsburgh City Beach. Kara Chapman, North Country Public Radio.
Seems like everyone has a story to share about a favorite library or librarian, be it the first time you checked out a book, or were old enough for a library card, or attended a storytime event. We're collecting library stories, memories, and profiles for our ongoing series that we're sharing online and on the air. Lucy Grindon joined Todd Moe on our morning show Northern Light to report back what you told us.
So this is sort of your project, and I wanted to turn the tables on you for a moment and ask why you wanted to use NCPR's Texting Club to collect information from people about public libraries.
Right. So earlier this year, the New York Times sent photographers out across the country to document the thrum and buzz in buildings once known for silence, libraries. And I was curious about what's happening at libraries here in the North Country.
Yeah. So who did you end up talking to? Which libraries did you visit?
Well, so far we've been collecting names and suggestions from folks in our texting club and via emails, and I've spoken by phone with a few listeners about their favorite libraries and checked in with a couple of library directors. I did stop by the library in the community where I live, Norwood, in St. Lawrence County. Amanda Jones is the librarian, and Jenna Brown is her assistant, and Jenna told me that she's always loved libraries.
I've been a library rat since I can remember. Back in elementary school in the 70s, I was the only kid who was allowed to touch the microfilm machines, those film loop machines. I would help run the VCR and the TV and the projector and all of those good things. And the librarians would put aside every book on insects because they knew that was me.
So we'll hear more from Jenna Brown and Norwood librarian Amanda Jones coming up a little later in the series.
You know, I was going through all the responses we got from the people who reached out to us about libraries, and we heard from so many people about how the North Country's libraries are such an important community resource and such an important social hub. And there's so many great ones we heard about in the North Country. But we also heard that not every town has one. The town of Minerva, for example, does not have its own library. Daphne Taylor is part of our texting club, and she lives there. And she said that the closest library to Minerva is about 8 miles away in North Creek. So if you don't have a car, you really can't get there. But now she said there's sort of a pop-up library developing in the Minerva Community Center. So this former substitute teacher who used to teach at the high school, he recently passed away, but he left money to the town to build a resource center like this. And then a local carpenter built these big built-in shelves in a corner of the basement of the community center. And now volunteers are stocking them with books people can borrow.
I just love that. That's so cool. I mean, like, talk about a real community effort there, huh?
Yeah, and it also shows you, that the demand for books is always going to be there, like the books are going to find a way to get to people. I talked to Teresa Fish about the project. She's the Minerva town clerk.
The building is also used for our meal site and our food pantry. For some people, especially if it's a senior who is going to the meal site, it's convenient for them to just go down and grab a book rather than have to travel out of town. And they're still working on filling the shelves because it's being filled by volunteers. But they're getting pretty full right now, so it's pretty well stocked. People have been donating books to the cause for over a year.
And I say hats off to the folks in Minerva for that pop-up library. That's really cool. And, people shared so many other, good news stories via the Texting Club. I didn't have time to follow up with all of them and everyone, but you went through all the responses, Lucy. And what were some of your favorite stories?
Well, I read all of the responses. We had several dozen, actually about 50 responses, and I pulled out some of the ones that really stood out to me, or things that I thought were good examples of things that lots of people said. Rachel Schaefer in the Southern Adirondacks said that because she lives with her family in the Adirondacks and they don't have cable or satellite, they've always borrowed movies from the library. She said free borrowing privileges allow you to participate equally. So she's really stressing this idea that libraries, are an equalizer and give lots of people access to media that they might not otherwise have, especially in the North Country where a lot of people don't have internet in their homes. Mary Lynn Fager in Lyons Falls, she said, the Lyons Falls Public Library will always hold a special place in my heart because my father helped renovate the old carriage house into a library when I was a child. And a lot of people talked about how a lot of libraries in the North Country were built for other things. They're buildings like barns, cabins, houses, which gives them sort of a uniqueness. Also, a lot of people gave personal shout-outs to their favorite librarians. Nancy Emmerich from Keene Valley said, Karen Glass at the Keene Valley Library is, to me, the queen of librarians. She's famous for how well she reads to young children. And I think 3 or 4 people said Karen Glass is fantastic. So shout out to Karen Glass in Keene Valley, great librarian. Angela in Morristown said, Bridget Whalen Nevin at the Morristown Library is an incredible librarian. I'm a high school English teacher and I love to read. If I don't have a good library with a good librarian, I can't function. I need books and I need good people to recommend them.
Now, all these stories came to us through our NCPR Texting Club.
Yeah, the Texting Club is a really great way for NCPR to get stories directly from North Country community members. So different people on our news team, this time it was you, Todd, send out text messages, maybe one text message every few weeks. And then community members can respond to our questions directly and tell us about their lives and their communities.
And you can join the NCPR Texting Club, right?
Yeah, you can join the NCPR Texting Club right now by texting NEW to 315-978-6277. And stay tuned on this project. We're going to keep working on it and looking for these stories throughout the coming year.
That's Lucy Grindon and Todd Moe talking about our ongoing series about libraries. Stories on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Dan Berggren of Ballston Spa and Beth Robinson of Potsdam. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.